This is Marjabeen Baraj from Pakistan, and you're watching my YouTube channel Insani Itihad, which aims to invoke a little bit of humanity in all of us through awareness and understanding. So today I'm going to talk about this book which is published by Dr. Rosita Armatag. I hope I have pronounced her name right. And this is after watching a podcast actually not one, two. One of the podcast in which she is being interviewed, and another podcast which is in Urdu, which summarizes kind of the contents of the book in the national language for most of the Pakistani viewers, so they get interested in actually reading the book. The book actually is called Big Capital in an Unequal World, the micro politics of wealth in Pakistan. So this book is tracing the micro politics and how things work out for the super elite in Pakistan. So she talks in detail about how the mainly or largely the industrial elites who have migrated from Gujarat have established their kind of nexus over everything and anything, and then the landlords and the army and bureaucratic establishment has helped them or taken their ideology of taking over the country after the partition of the subcontinent. Now, there are few things that this person who was the interviewer had highlighted in his Urdu, Urdu podcast or review of the book. I wanted to actually clarify why these things emerge. And when he's saying that some of the parts that he missed, so I just wanted to clarify those things. Starting with the beginning of everything, Pakistan, we need to understand the background of the subcontinent partition, and we have to see what was the construct or the economic, geopolitical, and microeconomic and political and social setup, or how was the construct before the partition of the two areas which now are referred to as Pakistan and Hindustan. I deliberately don't say India because India has become a country favorable only to Hindus, so I call or refer to India as Hindustan only. So when I say Hindustan, you probably feel a new or a separate country, but Hindustan is also another name of India. So whenever I mention it, just know which country I'm talking about. So Pakistan, as the geographical areas which conclude or construct Pakistan now of today, was basically this big land which had the main occupation of people here in the areas, by and large, every 5 province was agriculture. So Karachi was the port city, but it was not a very functional port. It was like a secondary port to Mumbai, and that was used to refer to as Bombay. So Bombay was the main port, and Karachi was actually not only Karachi, but the entire province of Sindh was under the presidency, or shall you say, in the control of Bombay, the province of Bombay, which is now the capital of Maharashtra state of India. So the port, the larger traffic or trade used to come either to Goa or Mumbai or Kerala and Cochin and other ports of India, because India has multiple ports. Even in Gujarat they had a port. I'm missing the name of that place, but I'll recall. But there were other ports which were doing the trading uh, instead of Karachi. So the traffic in Karachi was on a very lower scale, but of course there were a few traders here and there, mostly belonging to the Parsi community, and well, the words say it that there was a very small Jewish community there as well. So I don't know how large it was, but for the Jews who were working for the East India Company and were working for the British people, and many of the other the Portuguese or the French, so they kind of or probably would have settled in Karachi for that purpose. So Karachi was a very small trading city. Pakistan beforehand didn't have any official banking system, so to speak, because mainly there were more landlords here. So these landlords, or these these state princes, or the people who owned states, and then they owned also kind of those people who used to work on their fields. So it was like those different tribal leaders had their people who were poor, and they and middle class, and they used to work for them in their state, and that state could compose entire cities or provinces, or huge real estate, by and large the agricultural state. And those tribes were Sindhi tribes and Baloch tribes and Pashtun tribes and Punjabi tribes. So these were the people, the landlords, not only controlled the land, but they also controlled the people. And the British used to pay them money, so they didn't have this official banking system which everyone and anyone can access for borrowing and doing business and stuff. So on the lower scale, there were like Hindu, what do you say, Hindu banyas or Hindu artis or Hindu lenders of money. So these Hindu lenders, who were by and large belonging to the Brahman caste, used to lend money to the lower class people, while as the elites or the landlords would borrow and do trade with the East India Company directly, and the East India Company would directly pay those landowners and landlords or prince or whatever, the state state people who own the states, real estates, and the agriculture. So the Pakistani area was pretty underdeveloped, and there were not many universities or elite universities before the partition of the subcontinent. Everything was built after the partition, or the elite colleges like Atchison, or Punjab University, I think, was there before, or I have to check. But everything else in terms of academics and industry and having a system came after the partition of the subcontinent. Whereas in India, there were many states and areas which were fully developed as trade hubs. Like Odisha was a very big industrial state in terms of the trade that it and small cottage industries that it had. Bengal, the state of Bengal, was extremely developed in their handicrafts and fabric and industry, all sorts of industry. So British actually, and before the coming of British, nothing was industrialized as per. The Mughals, or the Muslim invasion, developed gradually and slowly the cottage industry, and then but it was, again, it was the kind of cottage industry based on artisans, and the local expertise or local artisans being promoted by the Mughals to have artistry, or develop their skills, and then their skills and their goods used to go to Persia or Croatia near, or China, and even to the extent to the Middle East, and the MENA region, Middle East and North African region, wherever there was the Islamic. But the Mughals and the Islamic Muslim leaders in the subcontinent were a bit isolated kind of people, because they were not as much, what you can say, and I actually mentioned this, that India has been invaded by Muslim invaders who were less radical and less violent, and more accepting, and kind of working together kind of mentality. So they had the best of the Muslim caliphate in terms of the other way around in Europe and Spain, and the MENA region and everything. So that invasion was actually a very radical invasion. Even the Turkey, the Armenians suffered massively, and the massacres and everything. Turkey, the invasion, the Islamic Caliphate was very, very brutal in that sense. But here the Mughals actually preserved and actually integrated the cultures, the language, and so they were very into arts and artisans, and beautifying things. So the cottage industry was there, but the industrialization of that cottage industry and making it mainstream and speedizing their export to the world, the Indian products go to all the colonies of the British, was thanks to the East India Company, which integrated these links, and products developed at a much faster and much more industrial and mechanical level. And then those things were spread across the colonies of the British, and then the technologies also get to transfer into the subcontinent, especially the banking system, and the banks and the treasury, and then academia. I mean, Aligarh to many other universities were actually into mainstream teaching, all sorts of, I mean, people did have awareness of accounting and finance, and because these Brahmins used to take interest, and when they would lend money, it was like one person lending money to many people, and then so there was this sense of it, but there was no institutionalization of that knowledge of lending money on interest. So banks were introduced by the British, and the entire this industrial, this mechanization of a society, and having these pillars, how to operate in that sense, and unifying, having this centralized control, rather than having different states with different representatives, or like there was Maharaja Ranjit Singh controlling some of the areas, then there were Rajas in Rajasthan, and then in Gujarat there was someone else ruling, then in Maharashtra, they were different states, and they were ruled by their local Maharajas and sheikhs, or Nawabs, or that sort of thing. So the centralization of resources and how to do business was actually done, or the systematic way of doing trade was introduced by the British. And when the partition happened, Pakistan was by and large ruled by these landlords who didn't had this who had these sort of mentalities that they are the Nawabs and the kings and the princes, and the rest of the people are just they're peasant. To change that and to introduce a more democratic system, Quaid-e-Azam worked with the British, and then Quaid-e-Azam, the founder of Pakistan actually, invited the Muslim business, Muslim and also Parsi business men, and these Muslim influential families in Gujarat and in Uttar Pradesh and other states to come and work in East Pakistan. Bengal was already, the state of Bengal, which became the West Pakistan, already had a huge intellectual layer, developed there, because they had educational institutions, and they had a very, the state of Bengal was a very, in trade, they were very much ahead of the East Pakistan. In academia, in learning, in education, they were ahead of Pakistan. That's why they kind of felt degraded when they were in this one unit. One unit was that East and West Pakistan was ruled together. So there were no, separation of powers. So there was one assembly for both the, both the countries, East and West Pakistan. And in between there was this big India. So here on the other hand, the four other province, that was NWPK and Balochistan and Sindh and Punjab, kind of felt that they are a bit less in terms of understanding how things work in the economic system after the British left, or the East India Company left, because they were heavily relying on those, and they were just farmers and state landlords. So these families, who were the business families, were accommodated in Pakistan and were given a lot of leverage to start from the scratch and lead their businesses in Gujarat and UP and other parts of India, and just focus on West Pakistan and East Pakistan. So again, the West Pakistan, because it was a competitive environment for these people who came from Gujarat and UP, because of the language barrier, and also the Bengali businessmen, or the Bengali economic system was much more sophisticated for them. So they didn't get things done like swiftly and easily. So they were like more interested in developing businesses and having their monopoly in the East Pakistan, which is the current Pakistan, nowadays Pakistan. And for that, they had the help of General Ayub Khan, who had the Industrial Revolution, and provided with lots of facilitation, like building dams for electricity to run big mills and all those stuff, and easy loan facilities for people, and all the incentives for developing industrial zones in Karachi and Gujranwala and Faisalabad and in Lahore. But Lahore, Gujranwala was not focused. It was much later, after the partition of the East and West Pakistan. These were the people who came from, this person also highlights in his videos that there were like 22 families who migrated from UP and Gujarat, mainly Gujarat, and they were actually seriously insecure about the Bengal being the trade hub, because they had a fully fledged port, and to access the port in Bengal from the Bengali businessmen, it was difficult. And Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and all those the socialist leaders in Bengal, they were like, this is our place, and we will not allow some people who don't even belong to the East Pakistan. They actually have migrated from Gujarat, from India. So they were not allowing this, this facilitation of trade and growth. So obviously they put a pressure on the army, and now the role of army in Pakistan was very very critical, in the sense that it has always been trying to create a balance between a feudal Pakistan, that is landlords who have been, patronized by the East India Company and the Queen and the British, the sons and daughters of the Sirs and the Khans and all those who have been patronized by the Queen and the East India Company. So the Pakistan Army's role ever since, till now even, is to patronize both the landlords and the industry people. So the Pakistan Army's role in this 76 years of span of the life of Pakistan is to create a balance between the landlord and the industrialist. So some army generals and dictators come and they, create a balance for the industry by saying, okay, we're gonna shove these feudals aside, and we're gonna, give you some fresh air. We're gonna, make sure that your products are, getting exported, and export duties and tax reductions and facilitation in importing heavy duty machineries and this and that. So General Ayub Khan did it, Zial Haq did it, and when the partition happened, the other generals who came after, that also facilitated that. Even General Zia facilitated the industrial people to in the hopes that Punjab, as an agricultural province, is also developed into a, industrial zone. So Ziaul Haq's efforts were the most balanced efforts in that context, that he managed to transform a completely agricultural country, a completely agricultural province, to to also an industrial hub. So the agriculture of Punjab was still there, but then it also had the industrialization, and it has a very wonderful balance, that there was no rift, like in the case of the province of Sindh, where the industrials are not in good terms with the landlords of Sindh. So the industrials are actually Urdu speaking people who migrated from India, and then there are landlords who are just these people who own lands, and they have this, and they have the political representations, and people like the Bhutto family. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was a huge, his entire family is a famous feudal family in one of the districts of Sindh. And there are many others. There are many others who have strongholds in different districts of the province of Sindh, and they have a direct rivalry towards the industrialists in Karachi. Mainly, the Karachi has become this district which has accumulated all the industrial, monopoly of the state of, not only the state of Sindh, or the Sindh province, but the entire country. There are more industries in Karachi and also in Hyderabad too, but largely there are more industries in Karachi as compared to entire country. But now, after CPAC and at the time of General Ziaul Haq, there was a revolution of industries and cottage industries, and sophistication of the industries in Punjab. And the credit goes to Ziaul Haq, who supported the very famous business family of Nawaz Sharif, and not only Nawaz Sharif but other families also who and now there are many families in Punjab who are not only landowners and farmers, but they're also into industry. So that, like I said, he was the only Pakistani journal who was able to create that balance. Other journals like Ayub Khan, they were like, at one time they were saying that, okay, let's do industrialization, have dams, have this and that, import heavy duty, machineries, support the industry. On the other hand, he was also involved in, nationalizing the industries and then giving favors to landlords like, Putosa. And then there were land reforms also, where it was Zulfikar Bhutto who said that no one can, that person, when he was quoting that India was having land reforms while Pakistan was actually favoring these a bunch of elites, these 22 families, to have industrialization and undue and unfair favors to do that. But that's not actually true, because Pakistan did had land reforms, and at some point of when actually the first tenure of Zulfikar Bhutto Saab as a PM, he did land reforms, and in his land reform he said that no one is allowed to have more land than 50 acres, because there were families who were having lands like 100,000 acres of lands, and some had 500,000 hectares of land. So it is a lot of land that people actually, like I said, they owned entire cities or 100 villages as their real estate, as their agriculture. And there are some families who are also politically represented in the politics of Pakistan, and they're still doing politics, and they still have a lot of agricultural land. So Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was the prime minister, and being a feudal himself, brought these reforms, these land reforms, where he obliged everyone to have not more than 50 acres of land on one single person's name, which of course had a huge repulsion from the and huge opposition from the farmers themselves, and it was very difficult. And in that context, many of these elite families, they started transferring their lands to their tenants and the people who used to work for them, the laborers who used to work on their fields. But obviously they controlled those people, and they controlled the land. So it was by name, the lands were transferred to farmers, but it was not their land, because they not only the feudals and those families not only controlled the real estate, the agricultural land, but they also controlled the people. So these were the things that I wanted to share and clarify, that at times we need to make sure that the context of everything is cleared. In the end, I would like to say, or like to mention, that all this phenomena that Qaid-e-Azam had thought of, inviting the industrialists and bankers and these expert families who were having their their businesses and their institutions and organizations working in Gujarat and other parts of India. This whole inspiration actually came to Qaid-e-Azam looking at the state of Israel, because it was Israel who actually had similar conditions as Pakistan, because by and large in Israel there were Bedouin farmers, Arab farmers, who used to work for the landowners who were either Jordanian Arabs, or they were Turkish. But since Turkish were defeated in the World War II, so they immediately had to run away to Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire had to just withdraw immediately. So the land actually belonged to some of the Arab elites of Jordan, and then the people who now call themselves as Palestinians, or so those were the people who came from Syria and Jordan and neighboring countries, those poor farmers, and these landlords would settle them into the lands of the Jews who were, kicked off to Spain or other European colonies of the Ottoman and the Ottoman and the Muslim Caliphate. So these poor people used to work the lands for these elite Arabs. So when Israel declared independence, Ben Gurion actually invited many of the Jewish people living in Russia and all over the world to come and have, a system for Israel, like the banking system, the industry, and because there were kibbutz before that, and they were doing farming, and nobody owned anything, so it was on the lower level to see how the system works. But Ben Gurion and other Zionists and other leaders invited this investment and influx of other Jews from other nationalities and from Europe, from US, from Russia, all over the world, to invest in the state of Israel, which was predominantly agricultural country. And all of them, the Rothschilds and this and that, all of these industrial people actually came to Israel, and they built this system of this economic system which had diverse portfolios, and Israel then became this economic stable entity, and it was not just this one agricultural country with no systems and no structure and no economic activity. So this was actually carbon copied by Qaid-e-Azam, but unfortunately Pakistan didn't get as many loyal investors as compared to Israel, because now when we see Israel, we see this perfect balance of the farming industry and the industrialization. Both are interdependent on each other through this one mutual link, which is technology. So they integrated this whole system that raw materials and everything comes from farming and the cottage industry, and then it is transformed into products through industrialization. And it is not a rift that we are going to take over the landlords, or the landlords are not feeling that okay, these industrialists are going to take away our heritage of farming and stuff. And these sort of again I would say these sort of insecurities of farmers is not just limited to Pakistan, but when we see the Sikh farmers in Punjab, the Punjabi farmers, the Sikh farmers, not only Sikh farmers, but Punjabi farmers from Haryana also protested the industrialization of farming, and the way farming is done on a local level. And it feels and they felt, the Sikh farmers and the Haryanavi farmers actually felt that people and big companies, big Gujarati companies, the Ambanis and Adanis, are going to take away our livelihood as small farmers, or our farming would just transform into this industrial thing which will create havoc and chaos. Because again, farming and all this thing has a different domain. Industrialization has a different domain. One thing which again can connect, and what we can learn from Israel, is technology, which not only facilitates the industry but also facilitates farming, and technology facilitates the entire economic system. And as much as technology is revolving and evolving, and it's connecting each and every economic field, and also supporting the academia and research, the country would have growth and diversity and a diverse portfolio, diverse economic portfolios, and it is important to have that integration and have that balance. I would put the link of the two podcasts. Please watch them. I think they have more insight than I have, and probably you would enjoy their discussions way more than mine. But if you did watch this till the end, thank you very much. I highly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.